UFC 299 is the most stacked card that we've seen in a while. And today I'm going to be taking a look at each of the big fights on UFC 299 and talking about the stakes and implications that each fight have without giving a prediction, because I'll come back around to those during fight week. Stick around to hear my thoughts on the UFC 299 card. I'm Wyatt, and this is Fight Society. All right, guys, so welcome back to A Closer Look. This is the series where I take an in-depth look at the stakes and implications surrounding the big fights on each pay-per-view. Come back around closer to the fight to hear my official predictions for each fight, and I'll do individual videos for those. But for now, let's talk about the stakes of the fights at UFC 299. All right, guys, so the first fight that I want to talk about for UFC 299 is the main event. Here we have Sean O'Malley against Chito Vera. Now, obviously, from a rankings standpoint, this is a pointless fight. But Sean O'Malley and Chito, they have history together. Sean O'Malley's one loss in his career was to Chito, and it was on that weird drop foot, basically, that Sean O'Malley got in that fight. And basically, here's the rub. They have beef, so they're fighting. And I put out a video last week talking about the UFC and WWE being more similar than most fans would like to admit from a promotional standpoint. And there's a need for that because the casual fans don't think about the rankings and they don't follow the sport very closely. So hearing, oh, Sugar Sean's trying to avenge his loss, him and this Chito guy have beef, that's going to bring more people in. Now, my opinion here is that Sean O'Malley has to win this fight, not only because it's his first title defense and because he needs to keep building his stardom to live up to the hype, but he's fighting down in the rankings against somebody he's lost to before and somebody that really doesn't deserve a title shot. So Sean O'Malley is rolling the dice a little bit with this fight because even though I think that he has the upper hand in this fight, Sean O'Malley fighting number 6th ranked or 7 ranked Chito Vera, who's coming off a split decision win over Pedro Munoz on a boring ass fight and lost. I think he's 1-1 in his last 2 because he lost to Sandhagen. He doesn't even have a streak going. This is a risky fight because we could see Chito Vera as the champ jumping from number 6 or 7 to champ status. So Sugar Sean is right there with Ilia Topuria as the future hopes for the UFC to build stars. And so the UFC is obviously hoping that Sugar Sean's going to pull this one out. And genuinely, I think that I'm leaning towards O'Malley in this fight due to the fact that Sean O'Malley puts people out. He hits like a truck, especially at 35. And Marlon Vera likes to get beat up. He gets beat up badly and then comes back and wins. So, and I don't think that's the right style to beat Sean O'Malley, but I'll come back around to that a little bit more in my prediction video. Big fight though, because if Chito wins, then we have like a whole mess at 135 with who's going to get what title shot. And you know the UFC does not want to have Chito versus Merab for a title fight. And then here you have, for the co-main event, Dustin the Diamond Poirier against rising French star Benoit Saint-Denis. Now, this is a huge risk for Dustin, and I give him big props for finally taking on a contender because you know he wanted to fight Nate Diaz. And Benoit Saint-Denis is no slouch, but this is a big step up for him. From Matt Frivola to Dustin Poirier, we're talking about totally different worlds of fighting, 2 totally different worlds of talent. So this is something to keep an eye on because Dustin, I think at this point is going to retire after his next loss. I think there's a lot of guys that have been there, done that, big fights. You know, he was an interim champ. There's a lot of guys right now like Usman, Justin Gaethje, potentially Volk, Dustin Poirier, a few guys, maybe even Izzy Adesanya, that I think their next loss could be their last fight. So this is one to pay attention to because you either have Dustin wins and is in the title talks again, because I have a feeling that they would have had to promise Dustin something crazy besides just money to fight a guy that just broke into the rankings. And then Benoit Saint-Denis could literally be in a title shot pick conversation. I know there's people ahead of him, like the winner of Holloway Gaethje and the winner of Sarukian Oliveira, or he could be a top 5 lightweight when he was unranked in November. So that's pretty crazy. So keep an eye on that one. That's a big fight for both of their careers. Either Dustin probably hangs it up if he loses, and Benoit Saint-Denis would be like the next French star behind Cyril Gane, I guess you could say. And then I would say that if Dustin wins, he's back in the title picture, and and then Saint-Denis would really have to work his way back up. Now, below that, you have Gilbert Burns and Jack Della Maddalena. And you have Gilbert Burns coming back in his first fight since losing a 5-round decision to Belal Muhammad, which he was injured for. And then you have Jack Della Maddalena coming off of a decision win over Kevin Holland, I believe. Yeah, and then you have Jack Della Maddalena coming off of a decision win over Kevin Holland, which I was pulling for Kevin Holland in that one, but it is what it is. But this fight is pretty similar to Poirier and Saint-Denis in terms of a big step up for a new rising prospect. I think Jack Della has the striking to basically point fight Gilbert Burns to a decision. But I think that seeing the way that Jack Della Maddalena almost lost to Basil Hafez, I think that he is a tiny bit overhyped. So I'll give you guys my prediction next week, but I think this is a huge step up in talent. And I know that the UFC does not want Belal Muhammad to fight for a title. So I could even see Gilbert Burns getting a title shot with a win here. I don't know the same about JDM, but I definitely could see Gilbert Burns getting a title shot with a win over Jack Della Maddalena. Next up, you have Petr Yan and Song Yadong, and this one is going to be fucking crazy. You have 2 really good strikers, and you have Song Yadong with big power. And these guys are both really good. This is one of the fights that I'm more excited for on the card. I know that neither of them are big personalities. I know that neither of them are very good on the mic, but I think that from a explosiveness standpoint, from a speed standpoint, this is one of the most intriguing fights that I've seen in a while. And I actually think that the winner of this fight, I could see Song Yadong getting a title shot with a win here. I think Petr Yan, because he's had back-to-back losses to O'Malley and Merab, I think he needs more than one win to get to a title shot. But I could see Song Yadong jumping Merab into a title shot with a win here. Or maybe the winner fights Merab. I could see that as well. But I just don't think that the UFC wants Merab in the title shot. Kind of the same as Belal at 170. So this is something to keep an eye on. It's going to be a crazy fight. And then after that, or before that, you have Kevin Holland versus Michael Venom Page coming over from Bellator. And I think that this is going to be the fight where Kevin Holland learns his lesson from the Wonder Boy fight and will actually take down Michael Page if things get a little spicy for him. Because Kevin Holland would have beat Wonder Boy if he was willing to just stay on the ground with him, but he wanted to give an exciting main event in front of a crowd, so he decided to stand and bang, and he ended up getting not finished, but they ended the fight in between rounds. This is big because Kevin Holland, I genuinely think, has world title potential at 170. I think that with his diet worked out, at being at 170, and him having such a big reach advantage, and with his explosiveness, I think that Kevin Holland is a real contender if he fights smart. He just doesn't have the best fight IQ a lot of the time. And the last time we saw him like actually get worked was Hamzat, who's a middleweight anyway, and Kevin Holland was a tiny middleweight from a weight standpoint. So I think that they're using this to build up both of their star power. Nobody's getting a title shot off of this, but Michael Venom Page, he's a little older, and so he's taken his UFC run seriously. He's going straight into the rankings. Kevin Holland is not an easy fight. Kevin Holland could probably take him down and submit him fairly easily. So we'll see if Kevin Holland chooses to make this a fan-friendly fight or if he decides to maybe grind it out with some wrestling or go for a finish on the ground. But Michael Venom Page is old. He's been around the block. This is basically win 2 or 3 fights for a title shot or retire after 1 or 2 losses. But I think that the UFC wants Michael Venom Page to win because I think that as much as they like Kevin Holland, I think that they have the idea of a Leon Edwards versus MVP fight in England at some point, which would be huge. Now, aside from that, I'm very excited for Curtis Blaydes and Jailton Almeida because this was supposed to be the fight that happened in Brazil in that fight night earlier in the year, but Curtis Blaydes pulled out and Jailton Almeida just cuddled with Derek Lewis for 5 rounds. And so this is going to be a very tough matchup for Jailton Almeida, who has looked rather unstoppable at heavyweight, but Curtis Blaydes does hit hard, and he is a lot bigger than Jailton Almeida, and he's not Derek Lewis. Curtis Blaydes is a high-level wrestler. So I think that this is going to be a grappling heavy matchup where the winner is probably 1 win from a title fight. I think guys like these are 1 win from an interim title fight with Tom Aspinall because I know they're holding out for the John and Stipe fight. And I honestly feel like they're going to treat the interim belt like the actual heavyweight championship until John and Stipe get that out of the way. So this is a big test for both guys. It could be on the slide because he got KO'd by Pavlovich. And so this is a big bounce back for him. And then Jailton Almeida, undersized heavyweight, but crazy athletic. He's kind of like heavyweight Khabib in his grappling style, and he doesn't really do a lot on the feet. I think that this is Jailton Almeida's fraud check moment. This is where we see if he can take a punch from a big guy. This is where we're going to see, and we saw him fight Derek Lewis, and Derek Lewis just didn't get anything off. But this is where we're going to see if Jailton Almeida is a title contender at heavyweight, because Curtis Blaydes has been the guy that people have fought on their way to a title shot at heavyweight. We had Francis Ngannou beat him, moved on to a title shot shortly after. We had Sergey Pavlovich KO him, move on to an interim title shot. And same with Derek Lewis. I believe Curtis Blaydes lost to Derek Lewis, and then Derek Lewis went into the interim title fight with Ciryl Gane. So this is a big career moment for both guys because Curtis Blaydes could be really on the slide if he loses this fight. And then Jailton Almeida could be looking at an interim title shot against Aspinall in Brazil, maybe, if he wins quick enough and doesn't take damage. And if not there, I could see if Jailton Almeida wins, he could fight Aspinall in the rumored Manchester event in July. And then besides that, you have Gamrot and RDA. That's a good fight. I thought RDA was done at 155, but Gamrot's one of those people where the fans don't really give a fuck about him. And RDA is on the back end. This is just like a rankings fight. This isn't necessarily a fan fight. I think this is going to be grappling heavy. But the 2 very fan-friendly fights are before that. You have Michel Pereira moving up to middleweight, because he missed weight against Wonderboy at 170, and he's big as hell. So he's going to be doing backflips in the cage. I'm excited to see that. And then making his UFC debut is world champion karate fighter, heavyweight, Robelis Despaigne, who is 4-0 with I think all of his fights are less than a minute. So John Parisian's going to get absolutely fucking smoked in that. They're sending him out to slaughter on that one. But hey, this is what they do. They got to build names. I think Despaigne could be a huge star with how explosive and fast he is being a karate practitioner. So we'll see what happens there. But those are the fights that I really care about on UFC 299. Come back around during fight week to hear my predictions for these fights. I'll be doing individual prediction videos for each of them. Yeah, and that's about it. So let me know what you guys think. Come back around during fight week for my individual prediction videos on each of these fights. And let me know in the comments, what are you most excited for on UFC 299? And drop a like, subscribe. Cool. If you like this video and you want more content just like this, click that subscribe button down below. If you want more content from me, go check out my weekly comedy podcast, the Hissyfit podcast. and go check out my personal channel, Wyatt's World. Go watch this suggested video, and I'll see you next time.